I went from this to this in just a little under 7 months. Stick around to find out how. Hello everyone, semi-retired Bob here. I talk about the carnivore diet, all things, all things related to the carnivore diet, and a few other miscellaneous odds and ends. Today we're going to talk about how horribly restrictive the carnivore diet is. But first, if you're new to the channel, let me start by saying welcome. I'm glad you're here. If you've never seen this channel before, quick explanation of what you're seeing is I walk. That's what I do. I walk. And the reason that's significant is a little less than 8 months ago, I could barely stand up for 2 to 2.5 minutes without severe pain. And now I'm out here walking every day. This is actually my second lap of the day, but you guys aren't going to get to see the first lap because there's people wandering around the church today and I got interrupted several times, so I'm just starting over. But that's what you're watching. You're watching me walk. To prove to you that it's never too late to change your life. I am almost 60 years old and spent the last 40 years sinking deeper and deeper into bad health. But yeah, let's talk about how restrictive the carnivore diet is and compare it to other things. The first thing people say to me is, Bob, how can you eat just meat? How can you do that? I gotta have some biscuits with my breakfast. Or I gotta have, some bread with my lunch, or a dinner roll with dinner. I gotta have my bread. Well, what is bread? It's carbs. What do carbs lead to? Well, inappropriate inflammation, arthritis, gout, type 2 diabetes, all of those things. If you eat too many carbs, there are lots of things that can go wrong. The next thing they say is, oh yeah, Bob, but okay, I can see sort of giving up bread, but how come you don't eat potatoes? Or any of the other great vegetables out there? Corn's really good. Well, first off, corn's not really a vegetable, it's a grain. And what's grain turn into? Sugar. And I understand. I mean, I really do get it. I spent, the majority of my life saying that if you're one of these people that doesn't consider biscuits and gravy a meal, you need to go away, because I don't need that kind of negativity in my life. I get it. I understand. But let's talk about the true restrictions. Not being able to stand for more than 2 to 2.5 minutes without severe pain. Why do people purposefully make their cars louder? Especially when they're a little puddle jumper. It's got some tiny little 4-cylinder in it. I don't get it. But anyway. What's restrictive is slowly doing damage to your body with type 2 diabetes because you didn't understand the disease. You know, you went to your doctor, we'll just use me as an example, and it was discovered that you had a 10.3 A1C. And then instead of still getting all over your case because it was still in the high 7s, low 8s, they applauded you for doing such a great job. When I don't know why there's this magical cutoff at 5.6. You know, they say 5.6 is not diabetic and 5.7 is pre-diabetic. I don't understand the sciencey stuff behind all that, but I do know that the lower you can get it to within a certain amount is better. And anything above 5.6, you're slowly doing damage to all of the tiny blood vessels in your body, which will eventually lead to, you know, worsening eyesight and blindness. First losing a few toes, and then maybe losing your feet, and then maybe losing a couple of legs. I said a couple, like you have more than two. Yeah. But anyway, you get the idea. I would think that would be a lot more restrictive than cutting some things out of your diet that aren't good for you. I had stage 1 chronic kidney disease. That would, if I had continued on the path that my doctors and nutritionists had set out for me, that would have continued to have gotten worse and worse. Till at some point I'd have been on dialysis, waiting on a kidney transplant list, knowing there's no way I'm ever going to get one because I'm already too old and too fat and too sick for it to probably take. So just slowly sinking further down until my life ended slowly and painfully. That seems a lot more restrictive than just cutting some things out of your diet. The gout. Not the gout, it's just called gout, but I was talking about my condition, gout. It kept me from doing a lot of things that I wanted to do in life. I had a very restricted life for the last 40 years. Every time I started some kind of an exercise program or wanted to go for a walk or go visit the zoo or whatever, some days I'd just have a gout flare-up and couldn't do that. Because it's very hard to walk. Several people have always asked me, well, how painful could it be? Well, the way I tell people, if you want to simulate the pain of gout, just for yourself at home, don't actually do this, folks. This is just an example. This is not a suggestion for doing this at home. But take a little cloth or a rag, soak it in some kerosene, or wrap it around your big toe or your knee, because most people get gout in their big toe. I have gotten it in almost every joint in my body. But for the sake of this experiment that we're not actually going to try and do, go ahead and wrap that kerosene soaked cloth around your big toe. Now put a match to it so it lights on fire. And while it's burning, go ahead and grab yourself a ball peen hammer and try and beat the flames out with that hammer. That's about what it feels like. Not the most painful thing in the world, but certainly painful enough that you don't want to walk on it while it's going on. I'd call my daily life being controlled by one of my diseases very restrictive. As opposed to just cutting some things out of my diet. And we won't even talk about, well, obviously we're going to talk about it because I just said that, how delicious meat is. Especially salted beef, which is what I eat 99, well, for the last couple months, it's been 100% of my diet. But overall, it's been about 95% of my diet, maybe. You know, a good ribeye, cooked medium rare, with a nice sear on the outside of it, covered in salt. So good. Or even the cheaper cuts of meat. Like I just had some stew meat last night or the night before, I don't remember which it was. It was still frozen a little bit. So I put a little water in my skillet and covered it and let it simmer for, I don't remember, 15-20 minutes to make sure it was all thawed out and starting to cook. Then I drained the water off of it, threw some butter in the skillet, turned the heat up, and fried it up till it was golden brown on the outside. It's very, very tasty. So, you know, I didn't get to have potatoes with it or green beans or a side of fries or whatever. I don't consider that restrictive. In comparison to now I'm out here walking every day. And since I started this way of eating, this way of life, gout has not been an issue. It has not interrupted what I wanted to do even one day. Fatty liver. Pretty much the same as, I mean, it's not the same disease, but the results would be the same as chronic kidney disease. Slowly sinking further and further until the liver becomes cirrhotic, and then it stops functioning, and you end up dying a slow and painful death. That seems a lot more restrictive than cutting a few things out of your diet. Heart disease. I'm sure I still have heart disease. I mean, I've had a triple bypass surgery. But losing 125 plus pounds now, and my blood pressure coming way, way down, has probably put a lot less strain on those systems, so that I can continue to live longer. Living longer doesn't seem too restrictive to me. Not dying of a painful heart attack or even a non-painful sudden death type thing, that doesn't seem too restrictive. That seems awfully restrictive as opposed to cutting a few things out of your diet. And now you say, okay, Bob, you've convinced me. What do I need to do? Well, there's a lot of a lot of noise out there on the internet, a lot of advice. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. We need to figure out how certain things affect us and whether or not it's something that's contributing to our problems. So you can start off with true carnivore, which is any animal product. No, bee vomit is not an animal product for the case of this argument. There's a lot of fructose, there's a lot of sugar. In fact, that's what bee vomit is pure sugar. But eggs, dairy, now a word of caution with dairy. Some people tolerate it, some people don't. So you just have to do that experiment for yourself. But don't forget about seafood. Ruminant meat is probably the best and should make a big chunk of your diet, which is, beef, lamb, sheep, bison, venison, camel, depending on what part of the world you're in. There's a lot of ruminant meats out there. Those are probably the best. But you can have chicken and pork and fish and all of those things. That's a good starting point. Or if you're like me and you have a lot of issues that you're trying to resolve, I would start with beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. As much as you want, as often as you want. As long as every time you sit down to eat something, you continue eating until you're comfortably stuffed. Don't stop and say, well, that seems like that's enough for one meal. I'll quit eating now till it's time to eat again. That's the wrong approach. Eat, especially when you're first starting out, eat until you go, oh, I don't want another bite. Then go ahead and stop eating. And you'll find that you eat less. Often. You'll eat less often. And you won't be hungry for snacks in between meals. And snacking is, I don't know when it became such a thing. I don't remember ever going in, arriving home from school or coming in from outside and playing halfway between breakfast and lunch or halfway between lunch and dinner and saying, Mom, what's for snack today? No. We didn't have snacks. We had mealtime, and that's when we ate. And this nose was running just a little bit. How hygienic was that, wiping my nose with my coat sleeve? That's okay, Monday's laundry day. We didn't have snacks. Every once in a great while, if we were watching a movie in the evening as a family, Mom would make popcorn. But that was maybe twice a month at most. It didn't happen very often. And this idea that we need to be constantly eating all the time having meals and snacking is horrible for us. That in and of itself creates a lot of the problems that we have today. Because what happens when you're eating constantly, your insulin never has a chance to go back down to its baseline. So that you're constantly in a let's clear the stuff out of the blood and put it into storage mode, as opposed to, because we have the ability to store fat for later use. That's the way we are designed. That's how we work. But we're designed to have those periods where we are actually using that stored energy, that stored fat. But if we eat all day, every day, we never get into the mode where we're going to use some of that stored fat, so we keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Worst advice ever. So eat till you're comfortably stuffed, especially when you're first starting. There are quite a few good influencers out there that suggest priming. And all that means is you eat a few bites past where you're comfortably stuffed for the first few weeks. And trust me, you'll still lose weight on that. Or other things will improve. You will be getting better during that process. I'm not sure what it's supposed to do for you, but there's a lot of people talking about it, so there might be something to it. I never did that, and I did okay. But that's just my N=1 experiment. You may be different. You are different. Everybody's different. And if you think to yourself, yeah, Bob, but that all sounds well and good, but I want to try what you're trying. Okay. Jump right into the lion diet. And all that is ruminant meat, salt, and water. It's the ultimate elimination diet. And then once all your ailments are much better, if you decide you want to add some foods back in, add one food at a time. And use just that one extra food for a few weeks to see how it affects you. And then if that one's okay, you've established that, okay, that food is okay with me, whether it be seafood or bacon or whatever it is you're adding back in. Maybe a little cheese is the first thing you add back in, or some kind of spice. Whatever it is, once you're sure that that's not going to give you a reaction, then you can add another food in. And you will eventually have a list of things that you can eat or you should eat, and a list of things that you probably shouldn't eat. Okay, feels like I've been rambling on for a while here. So I'm going to go ahead and do another lap or two. I already did a couple of laps, and what I got recorded on that, I went back and listened to it, and as I suspected, made 0 sense to me. So I scrubbed that and started over. So Unfortunately, because of that false start this morning, you guys aren't going to get to see. There's some cardinals in this tree here. I may have to go get my big camera out and see if I can't capture cardinals. Cardinals being the state bird of Ohio. So it's going to look like I didn't walk quite as far today, but I did. I just scrapped the first couple of laps of footage today because I don't even know what I thought I was talking about, but it didn't make any sense to me. And if it doesn't make any sense to me, it's certainly not going to make any sense to you guys. So anyway, I hope you enjoy these last couple of laps. Let's cue the music. Okay, cut the music. Thank you. So the bottom line of this video is, what's more restrictive? Whatever your condition is, slowly getting worse and worse, it interfering with your life, making it so you can't do things, or you take dangerous pharmaceuticals in an attempt to make your life better? Or do you just stop eating the things that are making you sick? Which one of those is more restrictive? As always, if you're still here, go ahead and hit the like, hit the subscribe. If you know somebody that might benefit from some of my stuff, go ahead and share this video with them. You have my permission to share anything I put out with anybody. You know, as long as you're not copying my content and calling it your own. That obviously isn't cool, but anybody you want to share this with, go right ahead. I think that's all I've got for you today, folks. I'm going to do some more walking here after I take a little break, but I think I've recorded enough for one day. Have a great day, everyone. Don't forget to get out there, be 1% better. I will see you tomorrow.